him, her decision to abandon him to find independence. For the themes, the sacrificial role of women, parental and filial obligations, the unreliability of appearance. Now for the motives, Noura's definition of freedom letters, the symbols, the Christmas tree, New Year's Day, foreshadowing Noura's eating of macarons against Torvald's wishes, foreshadows her later rebellion against Torvald. So the way her violation to his orders not to eat macarons, this gives us like an idea that she is going to make rebellion against Torvald as it happens. Now, what about the title and its significance? Is the title important and suitable to the play or not? This is the point that we have here, the title and its significance. To what extent the title is significant in the play? The play has an appropriate title. The word doll means a woman without any will or mind of her own, a passive and subservient woman. For 8 long years, Noura has been a passive and obedient wife. So Noura and her husband have been married for about 8 years, as it is written here. For 8 long years, Noura has been a passive. Throughout these 8 years, she was a passive, obedient wife. She was obeying her husband, quite obedient to him. And of course, you know, the name of her husband is Helmer, as you see here. So for 8 long years, they have been married for 8 years, as I said. For 8 long years, Noura has been a passive and obedient wife to Helmer, always conforming to his ideas, opinions, and tastes. He has always treated her as a pet, as his property. His attitude towards her has always been possessive, as if she wholly belonged to him and had no individuality of her own. Now the title and its significance, she has always accepted that position to be very obedient and passive, and to be like a follower to him. She has accepted that position. Thus Noura has all these years been a doll, and she has been living in a doll's house. But at the end of, Noura rejects her role as Helmer's doll wife, and forsaking him, goes into the world outside in order to have a first-hand experience of life, to establish her own identity, and to discover her own potentialities. Now, Ibsen called his play a modern tragedy, and a modern tragedy is surely it is a tragedy. Why we consider this play as a tragedy? It is a tragedy because it has a sad ending. Of course, you know, when you study, or even I advise you to watch the play, write on YouTube, write A Doll's House, you will have it as a movie. I advise you to watch it as a movie. So it is a tragedy because it has a sad ending, with Noura leaving not only her home and her husband, but even her children, in order to face an uncertain future. It is a tragedy because it depicts the breakup of a family. So it is the end because Noura, as you know, that at the end she decided to leave her husband, even to leave her children. So it is a tragedy because it depicts the breakup of a family and the disintegration of the domestic life of a couple. It is modern because it departs from the old style of writing tragedies. Now, also we consider it as a modern tragedy because tragedy before Ibsen used to deal with kings, as we said, and princes, army, generals, and so on. But Ibsen's tragedy deals with middle-class characters, right? So this is also another thing that is added to the contribution of Ibsen, that before him, tragedy used to deal with kings, queens, princesses, army general, and so on. But Ibsen's tragedy deals with the middle-class characters, as we said. Besides, tragedy was previously written in verse, and this is something very important. So tragedy, if you read any of the plays of Shakespeare, you will find that this play was written, or the plays of Shakespeare were written in verse, which means in poetic language. But here in A Doll's House, the tragedy is in prose, and everyday prose at that. The play is modern also, so it is a tragedy, and at the same time it is modern. Why it is modern? So now we know why it is tragedy. It is tragedy because it has a sad ending, and it's about an ordinary person. Now, why it is modern? It is modern because as its message is connected, and so far as its technique is connected. A Doll's House is the story of Noura and her husband Hilmer. They have been married for about 9 years, have 3 children. So they have been married, as we said, for 8 years, and about 8-9 years, and they have 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. 8 years ago, Noura had borrowed some money from a man called Krogstad, and this is a very old story. At the very beginning of their life, Noura went to the bank to get some money. And why she got and borrowed this money from the bank? Because, as you know, that her husband was seriously ill and he was about to die. So Noura did not take the money from the bank, did not borrow the money from the bank just to buy something for herself, to buy a car or to buy jewelry or whatever. No, she borrowed that money from the bank in order to save the life of her husband, who was seriously ill. So she borrowed the money from a bank, and the person or the employee who gave her the money was Krogstad, against a promissory note on which she had forged signature of her father, who was supposed to be a surety for the repayment of the loan. Noura had found it absolutely necessary to obtain this loan.